Welcome. You're listening to the Malcontent News Russia-Ukraine War podcast, the show that cuts through the fog of war and updates you about the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts.
Hello, I'm Marina Yevshan, your host of the Russia-Ukraine War Report podcast, and today is August the 7th, 2024. It has been 3,845 days since Russia started covert military operations in Crimea, 10 years and 168 days since the start of the Russia-Ukraine war, and 2 years and 165 days since Russia expanded its war aggression. Today's podcast covers the events that happened on Tuesday and Wednesday morning. You may find the Russia-Ukraine war map helpful to visualize the areas discussed. There is a link in the podcast description. There are a lot of map updates today. The Russia-Ukraine War Report is compiled by our team from around the world. Today's report includes information from our direct contacts and journalists in Ukraine, the Russian Ministry of Defense, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine morning reports, operational commands north, south and east of Ukraine, open source intelligence, our in-house team of analysts and geospatial experts, and pro-Ukrainian and pro-Russian mail bloggers and social media channels with a track record of trying to be accurate. We have one mission, the truth, because the truth matters. Here is my daily assessment. 1. In our assessment, Ukraine has started an offensive in the Kursk Oblast of Russia, which is utilizing significantly more resources than cross-border attacks in 2022 and 2023. 2. Our assessment that Ukrainian forces do not have enough resources to defend Donetsk and New York and the approaches to Pokrovsk and Selidove was accurate, with Russia gaining control of most of New York over the last 24 hours. We maintain that Ukrainian forces will continue to be pushed back until fall weather arrives. 3. We maintain that Russia will achieve the operational goal of capturing Donetsk and New York in 2024, and we further assess that for Ukrainian forces an extended battle in an urban environment is ill-advised. 4. We maintain that Ukraine's inability to re-establish air parity is enabling the Russian aerospace forces to provide almost uncontested close air support, forcing Ukrainian troops to withdraw as defensible positions are destroyed. 5. Despite the battlefield situation, Russian losses of armor, mobility and personnel continue at an unsustainable level, and the indiscriminate use of light infantry, regardless of losses, is significantly contributing to Russia's ongoing battlefield success. 6. We maintain that the August 5th implementation of the Russian law of guardhouses and the ongoing public confiscation of Russian soldiers' electronics will degrade our analytical capabilities and negatively impact Russia's secure tactical communications at and below the company level. 7. We maintain that the Russian economy is weaker than reported. 8. The Ministry of Defense of Ukraine remains unsuccessful in de-Sovietizing its senior commanders and meeting its obligations to properly train all new troops, resulting in preventable battlefield errors. Additionally, these issues have contributed to critical command mistakes on the battlefield that have enabled some Russian advances. 9. Persistent delays in the delivery of promised military hardware, munitions and funding continue to prevent the Ukrainian armed forces from reaching their full combat potential. 10. Recent statements by the editor-in-chief of the Russian state media agency RT, Margarita Simonyan, confirm that the Kremlin is starting to believe its own propaganda about the viability of limited nuclear war, confirming that the world is caught in the mutually assured destruction instability paradox. 11. The policy of escalation management implemented by the NATO alliance and the United States, and to a small extent Germany, is a failure. We assess that the risk of a serious international incident is increasing due to Moscow's belief that NATO is unlikely to respond. 12. Russia will continue to commit increasingly worse violations of international humanitarian law until international watchdogs and Ukraine's allies take a unified and firm stance. 13. In our assessment, Russia will restart sustained attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure by October, continuing Russian crimes against humanity that started in October 2022, as outlined in 4 arrest warrants issued by the International Criminal Court. 14. The attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure have incrementally increased the chance of an intentional nuclear accident at multiple nuclear power plants. Today, I'm starting with the action report summary. Yesterday, Russia carried out 136 discrete assaults, and through August the 6th, the 7-day moving average for daily attacks dropped to 134. The VKS, that's the Russian Aerospace Forces, carried out 73 airstrikes, dropping 97 bombs on civilian and military targets. Russian ground forces carried out 4,900 fire missions with tubed and barrel artillery. Ukrainian forces launched a significant offensive in the Kursk Oblast of Russia, which, at the time of recording, Kyiv has not acknowledged. Let's dive into what happened on the battlefield, because it's a lot. This would be a good time to open up the war map on a second device and find the city of Sumy, that's in the northeastern part of Ukraine. There is a link to the map in the podcast description. Ready? Here we go. Starting in the Sumy Oblast, we begin in the Sudzha Area of Operation, or AO. Yesterday morning, Ukrainian forces launched an offensive into the Kursk Oblast of Russia, crossing the border in 4 locations. There has been no acknowledgement that a new offensive started by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, the Office of the President or President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky, or from Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Colonel General Oleksandr Syrsky. Our non-governmental contacts asked us to be patient, honor operational security, and that more information will be shared as objectives are achieved. The operational objectives for Russia are to repulse Ukrainian incursion into the Kursk Oblast of Russia, maximize casualties, and protect civilians and civilian infrastructure. The operational objective for Ukraine is unclear, and that's not due to operational security. At the time of recording, we could not determine their tactical, operational, or strategic goals, and Ukrainian information security has been flawless. Based on the videos shared by Russian military units, drone operators, and civilians, the new offensive is not spearheaded by the Freedom of Russian Legion, that's the FRL, or the Special Operation Forces of the Main Defense Intelligence Directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, that's the GUR. The ongoing offensive is using significantly more assets than the June 2023 cross-border attacks led by the FRL in the Belgorod region. For today's podcast, I'm only sharing publicly available information shared by Russian sources, reports from the military administration of the Sumy Oblast, and our analysis of that information. The acting governor of the Kursk Oblast, Alexei Smirnov, advised civilians to, quote, remain calm and do not give in to information provocations from the enemy, adding that, quote, the situation is under control. Smirnov reported that 5 civilians, including 2 medics in an ambulance, were killed and another 28 wounded. Complicating the situation, on August the 4th, Russian commanders announced that the Ministry of Internal Affairs would start confiscating the personal vehicles of soldiers and those purchased by volunteer organizations for military use. Russian mail bloggers claimed the step was being taken because Ukrainian drones were making the movement of military vehicles for logistics, troop rotations, and case vac impossible. Russian state media agency SHOT appealed for blood donations due to the ongoing fighting. Russian mercenary mail blogger Wogonzo wrote, quote, the situation in the Kursk region turned out to be much more serious than it might seem at the first glance. Much larger forces are involved, and the enemy, quick sidebar, he means Ukraine, apparently is not going to just take pictures and run away. The enemy is really prepared this time. Russian sources claim that Ukrainian forces crossed the border at Zhuravka in the Sumy Oblast and advanced as far as the eastern tip of Tolstoy Lug. Russian drone video showed 2 Ukrainian Kuga HE mine-resistant armored protection vehicles destroyed on the eastern outskirts of the village, confirming a Ukrainian presence. Russian sources also claimed, without evidence, that Ukrainian forces occupied Nikolaeva-Daryina and Daryina, and that fighting for control of Nizhny Klin was ongoing. Multiple Russian sources alleged that Ukrainian forces occupy Sverdlikova, crossing the border at Novenka in the Sumy Oblast. Mercenary Russian mill bloggers Rybar and 2 majors independently claimed Gogolevka and Aleshnya, south of Sudzha, were occupied by Ukrainian troops, and fighting was ongoing in Goncharovka. 2 majors added, quote, "The coming days will be difficult. The enemy has at least a motorized infantry battalion on our and adjacent territory, up to 2,000 personnel as a second echelon, uses many drones, and skillfully uses air defense and electronic warfare systems." NASA information for resource management systems showed widespread fires in the Kursk Oblast settlements of Sudzha, Sverdlikova, Aleshnya, Goncharovka, Garnal, and Guyevo. Russian sources claimed that a drone hit the Nikolsky-Belogorsky monastery north of the village of Garnal. 2 buildings were significantly damaged, with one showing a damage pattern likely caused by an airburst of a fragmentation warhead. In the pictures, which are linked in today's situation report, the damage is more significant than strikes by first-person view one-way drones. Yesterday afternoon, the Russian Ministry of Defense released a statement claiming, quote, "The remnants of the sabotage group retreated to Ukrainian territory, where they continue to be subjected to fire strike," and then deleted it without explanation. Russian propagandist Sergei Mardan complained on his show about the lack of information, quote, "We want to draw information from official sources, but there are none. Where are the accredited official war correspondents? Where are the stories from local television stations?" Earlier reports by Russian civilians and mill bloggers of Ukrainian forces reaching Sudzha were likely due to panic caused by heavy shelling and the fog of war. On social media, residents blasted the Kremlin, Russian propagandists, and Chechen Akhmat troops that were previously deployed to the area to support the border guards of the Security Service of Russia, or FSB. One person wrote, quote, "The Ukrainian army is near the city of Sudzha. The vaunted Akhmat has retreated." Several Russian mill bloggers also reported that Chechen Akhmat abandoned their positions. One of Russia's most popular propagandists, Yuri Podolyaka, wrote on Telegram that Sudzha had been evacuated, which was repeated by almost every mill blogger. Quote, "By evening, the original center of the Kursk Oblast, the city of Sudzha, was evacuated. Most of the population was taken out." There were furious replies on the Telegram post, with civilians calling him a liar, alleging that Russian officials were only creating lists of people requesting evacuation. Quote, "They won't evacuate people during the shelling. And when will the shelling end? Yura, can you answer that?" I'm going to cover a lot of geolocated pictures and videos from Russian sources. They're all linked in today's sitrep, and there is more information on how you can become a subscriber in the podcast description. In Sudzha, geolocated video recorded by a drone showed that 2 Russian heavy transports hauling T-62M medium-duty tanks were destroyed. North of Sudzha, on the R200 highway, a civilian shared a video of a burning truck near the intersection of the P200 highway. Before reaching the truck, 2 Russian Su-25 frog-foot ground attack aircraft flew over their car. On the P200 highway, between the MiG-29 statue and a Rosneft gas station, a civilian recorded a building destroyed in an explosion. A Russian drone video showed buildings on fire to the south of the OBUZ Sudzhanskaya hospital in Goncharovka. South of Milovoy, Russia, near the Russia-Ukraine border, a squad of 7 Russian soldiers with the 448th Motor Rifle Regiment were taken prisoner and marched into Ukraine. At least one was a conscript who told members of the Ukrainian 17th Border Protection Battalion that their orders were to prevent a Ukrainian breakthrough. Another 5 were captured in a different location that we could not geolocate. Russian sources claim that 2 Russian attack helicopters were shot down, a Ka-52 Alligator and a Mi-28, which reportedly was destroyed by a Ukrainian drone. It is possible a single helicopter was shot down, and the fog of war has split the reports. The head of the Sumy Oblast military administration, Volodymyr Artyukh, reported that a ballistic missile was shot down over the region, suggesting that a Patriot or SAMP-T air defense system has been brought into the area. Russian mail bloggers reported that Russia's ability to conduct close air support had been significantly degraded due to Ukrainian air defenses. The Russian Ministry of Defense released a video showing 2 Ukrainian Buk M1 air defense systems destroyed by 2 Iskander-M or North Korean KN-23 short-range ballistic missiles west of Sinne. This morning, Sumy Governor Artyukh reported an increase in Russian shelling and airstrikes, but not beyond other periods of high activity. According to his report, the VKS dropped 16 bombs in the Yunakivka area. And that's what we can share about the situation in the Kursk region of Russia. Next up, the Kharkiv Oblast. In the Liptsi-Vovchansk area of operation, fighting continued in Vovchansk and the direction of Tykhe, with no change in the situation. Russian forces were able to recapture the northern half of Gleboka, and fighting continued on the southern edge of the Russian salient southwest of Lukyantsy. In the Kupiansk-Yo, Russian forces increased their activity with attempts to advance towards Sinkivka, Novoosynove, Glushkivka and Kolesnikivka, ending in failure. Moving south to the Luhansk Oblast-Yo. West of Crimea, Russian forces attacked Ukrainian defensive positions on the eastern edge of Makiyivka and in the direction of Nevske, Terny and Torske, where a small Russian advance was recorded. Russian troops continued their attempts to retake lost defensive positions in the eastern part of the Serebryansky forest, with no change in the situation. Now let's talk about the Donbass and the northeastern part of the Donetsk Oblast. In the Siversky-Yo, Russian forces carried out 21 attacks. Ukrainian forces repulsed assaults east and southeast of Bilogorivka toward Verkhnyokamyansk from Zolotarivka, in the direction of Ivanodarivka, in the western part of Spirne, southeast of Vyimka, and on the southern edge of Pereizne. In the Kostantinivka-Yo, Ukrainian forces maintained their defensive lines on the western edge of the canal district of Chasiv Yar and in the forested areas west of Ivanivska. Russian forces made significant gains in the Toretsk-New York-Yo, aligning with our August 5th sitrep analysis. Intense fighting continued in western Pivnichne and between Zalizne and Toretsk. Russian forces reached the northwestern edge of New York, raising a flag on school number 38, 1,000 meters from Nelipivka. Russian forces advanced in the direction of industrial district in the center of New York, and were within 3,000 meters of the Russian forces in Zalizne. Today's advances were so rapid, it is likely Ukrainian forces have started an intentional withdrawal to Nelipivka. In our assessment, Ukrainian forces in the eastern part of New York are at risk of encirclement, and if they have not been withdrawn, they should be pulled back. Russian troops continued their attacks in the direction of Panteleimonovka, and fighting restarted near Oleksandropol. A Russian assault in the direction of Kalinova was repulsed. The situation is critical. In southwestern Donetsk Oblast, Ukrainian forces have, at least temporarily, slowed the Russian advances in the Pokrovskaya. Assaults on the eastern edge of Vozdvizhenka, north of occupied Novoalexandrivka, and on the western edge of occupied Vesele, the one west of Progress, ended in failure. Fighting continued on the edge of Ivanivka, in southern Sergiyivka, and in the western part of Zhelanne. Russian forces also attempted to advance in the direction of Novozhelanne, Mezhove and Skuchne. Further south, fighting in the area of Yasnobrodivka continued. There were no new territorial changes in the Kurachovo, where the intensity of fighting was reduced. Russian forces remained stuck between Netailove and Karlivka, where heavy fighting was ongoing. We were able to clarify the line of conflict in Krasnohorivka, with the Ukrainian forces still controlling the area north of the Lozova River and the northwestern corner of the settlement. Based on the new intelligence, we adjusted the grey zone and line of conflict. Russian forces continued their attacks on the southeastern edge of Kostiantynivka without success. In the Vuhledar, fighting continued east of Vodyane near the T-532 highway, with no change in the situation. Finally, a quick update about the situation in occupied Crimea. Special Operation Forces with the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine carried out a raid on the Tendra spit of occupied Crimea. The attack destroyed, quote, enemy armored vehicles, including MTLBs, an enemy electronic warfare system, and Russian fortifications. And that's what we know. Your support of my home, Ukraine, helps us make history and protect the future for all.
You've been listening to the Malcontent News Russia-Ukraine War podcast. To help keep us independent, please consider providing financial support by becoming a patron. Want on-demand news in your hand? Download the Google News app and make Malcontent News one of your favorites to receive breaking news updates. Thank you for listening.